This video was made in association with KnifeInformer.com. Head on over to Knife Informer for all of your blade-related needs, including reviews, comparisons, stats, and more. What is up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Lovely Loaners. In today's video, we're going to take a look at this Damasteel Reate Future. I was very excited to be able to obtain this knife as a loaner. It was definitely something that I had my eyes on when Reate was launching this model. It was something that I never ended up jumping for, as I feel like they're not quite up to par with like Shirogorov in terms of spending $600 or $700 on a production knife. They're certainly getting there, but at the time of the release of this model, I didn't feel super motivated about that. So definitely excited to have gotten to try this knife out and excited to talk to you guys about it. So before we jump in, let's go ahead and check this thing out next to a PM2 and a RAT2 so that you can get a decent idea of a size comparison. And then shortly after we do that, we will check out the overall weight of the knife. That should give you guys a pretty good picture of what we're looking at in terms of specifications. So you can see in terms of length, it is greatly superseding that of both knives. Certainly dwarfs the RAT2 pretty substantially. This is going to be a larger knife. Now, while because of the overall blade size, it does sort of border on pocket sword, the overall weight of the knife and the slimness of it in your hand makes it ultimately feel pretty easily wieldable. It's not too. It certainly shouldn't be confused with something like a bodega, for example. The frame is kept fairly slim. You do have. Well, it appears that there's no internal milling, but they did keep the frame rather slim and rather small overall. So the weight's not too crazy. We'll, of course, check that out in just a moment. But even though the blade is rather large, and it does kind of border on that pocket sword area, you can see it's still not too much crazier than a PM2, quite frankly. So let's go ahead and see how that weight does, in fact, stack up. I have not weighed this knife previously. So let's see here. Get it folded up, get this thing turned on in ounces. 5.4 ounces. So it is a rather substantial knife, although I have to say that in the hand, it doesn't feel quite that crazy. I can see where the 5.4 is coming from. It feels heavy in the way that like a bar of gold feels heavy, and by that I mean it feels heavy in a dense way, but not in kind of an unruly way where you have this major impact to the balance of the knife. You can see the knife is really well balanced right here on the area for the finger, which is pretty cool actually, considering how the blade in fact dwarfs the overall frame in size. This is one of the only knives that I've ever really seen where the overall shape and size of the blade actually dwarfs the frame. It's pretty amazing how much blade they managed to cram in this thing. It almost appears that the blade is even longer than the frame. Goodness, I actually kind of want to measure that. Sorry, I didn't plan to do this on camera. I'm going to make a bunch of noise. Let's check this out, actually. I'm like super interested now. You guys can go on a little adventure with me. So let's see. So if you actually go all the way to the tang, we're looking at about 4 3/4 inch. And then if we try that from the tip of the frame, 5.1 inches or so. Okay, so the frame is larger than the blade, which obviously makes sense, but I startled myself a little bit there, got excited, and thought, hey, maybe they defied physics, but they did not. So yeah, it's not too unruly. It feels dense like a bar of gold, as opposed to super kind of top heavy or topsy-turvy like some other heavier knives that you might get your hands on. So let's go ahead and jump into the features and flaws on this knife. Now, this is a knife where I felt like I had something a little bit different, which is a TLDR, too long didn't read, which is that this knife, everything about it rocks. Everything about it is super cool and functions well, and I really love it. But the action kind of sucks. So it's kind of like overall the knife is a wash. That's obviously not super fun to hear. So let's get more specific than that and tell you guys a little bit about what I'm talking about. So the major flaw that I'm detecting in the knife, as just mentioned, is a poor action. By poor, I don't mean that it doesn't function super well. You do get pretty decent deployment, and if you hit it, with vigor, you get really great deployment, and you can kind of shake the knife shut in somewhat reasonable way. The problem is that there is a ton of friction and grunginess coming from the detent ball rubbing along the detent track. Now, I've conferred with other members of the community who have this knife, and I've had quite a few people send me videos of the action on theirs so that I could get a bit of a consensus. And I feel pretty confident at this point stating that at least for the Damasteel version, the action is pretty weak. And it really must just boil down to a not smooth detent track, because that's really where I'm feeling that feedback coming from, and it makes the knife feel like it's being dragged through a swamp as it comes to a close. It's really, really unfortunate, because honestly, Reate action is usually the area in which they kind of knock it out of the park on most of their knives, so this was a big disappointment. Now, it's important to note that I need to make the distinction that this is the Damasteel version versus the M390 version. I'm not sure if it's just improper masking done on the etch on the Damasteel version that's causing this issue. So I would be really interested to hear from people with M390 versions, or I know a lot of people actually have both, one of each. I would love to hear from anybody that owns one of each to tell me if there's a difference between the action on the M390 versus the Damasteel, because this was a big time bummer. But let's go ahead and jump into some of the better stuff that I did enjoy about this knife. So first of all, the blade. Now, obviously, Damasteel from an aesthetic perspective is personal preference. Some people, just think it's downright ugly. Some people don't want to get something like this because they like a working finish, and as soon as they, cut it through something that's maybe not super soft, it might scratch up the etch and everything, and they don't like that. So that's entirely personal preference, but I gotta tell you, from my perspective, I think this is a great etch. I really love the pattern. I love how you get these really tight circles all down here, and then it kind of gets stretched out as if they were kind of being stretched through time. It's kind of a cool look. So the Damasteel on this one definitely is something that I'm a fan of personally, but obviously that boils down to personal preference. Now, while whether or not you get Damasteel is certainly up for debate, the blade shape is not. This is a delightful blade shape, and the overall way that they've made it tailored to the frame makes this thing an absolutely excellent slicer, and more specifically going to be great for food prep. So you can see when I actually hold the knife, the edge, the cutting edge, is almost closer to the flat surface that I'm up against than my fingers are, my knuckles, and that's a really impressive overall shape. It very much shares a shape of a chef knife, where the handle is very high up, so that the first thing making contact with a flat surface, if you were to put your hand down, is actually going to be the cutting edge. So this thing is super sweet for like food prep and stuff like that. You have a really tall flat grind. The blade stock is a teensy weensy bit thick, but nothing that will impede you from slicing something like a tomato, even though this might do better in something like chicken than it would a tomato. But nevertheless, it is a delightful blade shape. It is unfortunate that the cutting edge only comes up to this point, but again, because of how long it is, I don't think that's going to have an impact on your daily use by any means. And so yeah, just the overall grip and ergonomics of the knife, really cool. I know I'm talking about the blade, but everything on the knife really lends itself to the blade. It's definitely a blade-centric knife, so that is something that I can definitely appreciate and really enjoy. Something else that I can talk about with the blade is the spine. They did round off the spine just a little bit. Try to show you that here. And the pattern on the spine in the Damasteel just turned out gorgeous. I'm just going to show that to you guys. Freaking epic, absolutely beautiful, but they did not include any jimping, so you are going to be a little bit slippery up on here. This is not going to make the best grippy knife, and that's sort of kind of the next thing that I want to move into, which is that the frame doesn't give you a very grippy feel. It is super soft and slippery titanium all the way through. It's very contoured, and so overall you're definitely going to have like I have slippery hands right now because I'm in a room that's like 80 degrees and I'm sweating, and so this knife feels like it would go like a banana peel out of my hand if I were to really bear down on it. But again, not a lot of us are going to be using knives like this, especially the Damasteel version, for anything too extreme. So normal amounts of pressure, perfectly fine, and the ergonomics are really, really solid. When I first looked at the knife and when I first received the knife, I thought that the overall shape of the knife would not lend itself to good ergonomics. It seems like a pretty radical shape for a knife overall, and I was a little bit concerned, but really if you kind of just only look at the knife from here back, you can see that it's a pretty generic handle shape. And like I said, everything is contoured very well. Everything's at 45-degree angles or better, and it's just a very soft, very well edged knife to kind of put your hands on. And that's really good for a production knife that, they're taking the time to really contour every edge and make it so that you can really rub your hand over the side here with all these little 90-degree angles with the inlay and everything and kind of the sharp edges on the clip, and it really just feels good. It's not bothering me at all. There's no hot spots on the knife or anything like that. They did a really good job. The next thing that I want to say is that I did really appreciate this dash of color in the spine of the handle. They just did a little bit of blurple anodization in these little triangles, and it's cool. It's just a little something to give the knife a little pop, a little flavor. Obviously, with the marble carbon fiber and Damasteel version, you have tons of gray, black, silver, gray, black kind of going on with the knife, and that's really all there is to see. So to kind of look at the knife from a different angle and get a little bit of pretty anodization in there is really nice. That was a nice little touch that they added in. Now, to talk about the flipper tab, I had made some comments about knives with flipper tabs like this that are very, very steep and have a very shallow kind of edge. This was an issue with the Custom Knife Factory Muscle that I had, as well as another knife that is currently escaping me. I did the Muscle, then I did another knife with a flipper tab like this. I believe it was the Custom Knife Factory Tegral, and I had commented that the Tegral did a better job of it than the Muscle, but that overall I took issue with flipper tabs shaped like this, and somebody saw the Tegral video and messaged me and said, hey, I have a Reate Future and I really want to send it to you because you need to know that this flipper tab can be done correctly, because mine is excellent. I ended up receiving the knife from somebody else, but I was really excited and had a lot of anticipation to be able to prove or disprove the comments from that viewer. And I have to say, Reate really did, and I guess Tashi is really the designer. I should be speaking about Tashi more than Reate. But they really nailed it with doing this flipper tab design and making it function well. So as you can see, there is jimping up here, which means that I'm not going to be slipping right off. Even though the flipper tab is only this little section, you can see that they've created this little kind of finger-shaped ramp up here. So you actually get the whole of your finger here, and then that allows you to kind of pull down, and as you start to slip off, your finger catches that jimping and gives it the nudge that it really needs to break the detent. Another issue that I took part with this type of flipper tab was that the leverage was off, and they did the geometry for the flipper tab to the detent very well. So I really put minimal effort into this deployment, and I get solid deployment every time. So hats off to Tashi and the team at Reate for really nailing that flipper tab design and making it work. I'm definitely excited about that. As far as the clip goes, it is very aesthetically pleasing. I really like this satin finish that they did on this middle section here. It really blends well with the overall knife. It really has that futuristic technological look that the rest of the knife has. I really enjoy that, and it functions pretty well. So it's aesthetically clean and pleasing, and it functions great. That's as good as anybody can ask. As far as the marble carbon fiber version goes, it's kind of interesting. This marble carbon fiber is not polished or contoured or anything like that, meaning that you actually have the texture of the carbon fiber that you can feel. That's a pretty cool touch. Most carbon fiber is going to come, fully polished out, kind of like this, usually with some sort of coating, some clear coat on it to get rid of any voids or anything like that. So on this particular one, I thought it was a nice touch that they left a little bit of texture in there. Kind of just makes it enjoyable to touch and gives the knife a little bit of a different sensation. Obviously, I haven't tried the version with the Mokutai inlays. Those would obviously add a little bit more color to the knife as well, even though I dislike the primarily bronze yellowish version of Mokutai that they released with these knives. So the marble carbon fiber is a nice touch. I like that I can feel it when the rest of the knife is smooth. It's pretty cool. So that's about all I have to say on this one, guys. Trying to keep these a little bit shorter as best as I can anyway. Certain knives are certainly not going to get the 10-minute treatment, but yeah, that's pretty much it. It was definitely a disappointment to have the action fail on this one. Quite frankly, if the action on this had been comparable to really any other Reate that I've tried, they don't have to drop shut like a Thorburn or feel like glass like a Shiro. They just need to function pretty well and be smooth. This feels like I'm dragging it through a marsh, and that is not a good feeling. Like, this is grungy and not even, and you can feel it kind of jumping around, and it's just kind of crummy. So if the action on this had been excellent, then I have to say I would have 100% felt comfortable spending $700 on this knife. It is in every other way worth every penny that Reate asked for it. So definitely look forward to hopefully hearing from owners of the M390 version, or again, more specifically, owners that have both, that can give me a little bit of a comparison, or if you want to send an M390 version along for lovely loaners, be happy to facilitate that to give a little bit of a comparison, because one of these with a great action is honestly going to be one of the best knives on the market. I love everything about this knife except the action. So thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Be sure to follow me on Instagram to see beautiful pictures of all these lovely knives. Subscribe if you like the video and you want to see more content. If you would like to send me along a lovely loaner, you can do so by emailing me at tovarishworks@gmail.com. Thanks again, guys. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time.